What's up, everyone? Welcome into Pass, Shoot, Score. I'm Anna Connolly, joined by Johnny Lazarus and Shukri Wrights. Deep breath, you guys. This has been a week. How are we feeling this lovely Friday morning?
Shukri, you started off, dude. I don't want it.
You want an honest answer, Anna, or you want me to give you a completely rated G answer? Like, you want an honest answer? I'll give you an honest answer. I'm in a horrible I'm in a horrible fucking mood. I'm sorry, this is the one and only time I'll curse on this pod, but I'm in a horrible mood, and it has nothing to do with my co-host. I really like, but honestly, these last several freaking days with Bruins have really angered me to a point where I really curse out Jim Montgomery because he just comes across as this guy who absolutely doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Like someone just jumped in his freaking body and said, "Hey, I'm going to play the role of an imposter." And well, maybe we should have, change up the lines a little bit. Get a freaking clue. Get a clue. It's your damn fault that we're not playing hockey. You want to know how I feel? I'm pissed. We should be playing hockey, not the goddamn Florida Panthers. Not the Panthers. Yeah, I'm pissed. How am I feeling on this Friday morning, Anna? And to answer it nicely, I'm mad. I'm angry. I've got a lot of anger pent in right now, a lot of emotions. So how I feel after the Bruins bought a 3-1 series lead? Angry. I still haven't gotten over back to what happened. But I do feel your pain because I understand that the Kings got eliminated. And Jay Lass, I feel your pain too. I'm not even making fun of the Rangers. But God, how's everybody else doing this Friday morning? How are you guys?
Shukri, to interrupt, you know what my therapist always says? Sad hides behind mad. So I believe in getting these feelings out. There are a lot of pent-up emotions, but I think Shukri is just sad today.
I'm doing way better than Shukri's neighbors are doing right now. Holy shit, man. It's like 10 a.m. You're probably waking the whole neighborhood up with that rant.
Neighbors, I don't even care.
It is funny, though. Like, Shukri's got the angry vibe, and I'm more of like the sad vibe. I think that's just how fans are different, right? Like, I'm not the one when the Rangers are playing bad to like throw something at the TV or like punch a wall. It's more so like, hands in my face. Like, I just can't believe what I'm watching. And I think, to the point, all three of our losses, like the Kings, Bruins, Rangers, were all different kinds of losses. Like, to Shukri's point, the Bruins were just, a massive shock because they were supposed to be the ones to get to the Stanley Cup final. And still, I think people can't believe that they weren't able to get past the first round. For me, it's just disappointment. Like, the Rangers had so much hype around them, and this truly felt like a year where they could make magic happen with the roster that they had. And this Devils team just came out and surprised everybody. And rightfully so, they're playing in the second round. Like, the Devils were the much better team. And then, the LA Kings, I mean, people didn't really have them in favor of the Edmonton Oilers, but they came out and they fought hard and they could have easily won that series. But I don't think it's like a disappointment or a failure. It's more so just like, hey, we're right there with the best of the best and we can do this. And I think that's the beauty of the show is that like all three of us are probably having three different emotions right now. So
I was literally about to say that Shukri represents anger.
We're like Inside Out, the movie.
Pissed off. Yeah, literally we're representing all the emotions. Johnny's like, okay, you know what? That was sad. Like, we should have done better. And then I was literally about to say, like, in the post-game presser, you heard Kyler Yamamoto, who was a junior king growing up, at least for a little bit because hockey. But that was like happy, even the LA media was like asking him questions, like, this is really exciting. And then Connor McDavid and then Todd McClellan came out and he was even like, hey, we gained 6 more games of playoff experience. Yeah. So it almost feels like, and kind of, this is a hot take, but I feel like this is supposed to be hot takes. But like, I feel like 5 or 6 years ago when we were watching the Colorado Avalanche and we were like, they're going to be really good in a couple of years. If they stick with this roster and they just hang on to it, like they're going to be good. Like that's how I feel with this Kings team. So I feel like I'm the future optimist here. We're representing everything here. All of the fans' emotions are right in this little pod.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The only thing with that and with like my situation and with Shukri's situation too is that, there is a lot of optimism for the future, but there's also like the legendary guys that we have on our rosters right now that are on their way out. Like you look at the Kings and it's Kopitar, Doughty, who have been there for a decade plus that are, and Quick got traded away already. So like, those guys are on their way out pretty soon. Yeah. And then Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, like they only have a couple years left in them probably. And for me, it's like, Chris Kreider and Patrick Kane now, even though he wasn't really a Ranger for life, but these older guys that are on their way out, but there is still that young talent that each team has to build around. But, I don't want to talk too much. Shukri, I don't know if you have a thought on that as well.
Well, Shukri, you got to see, I agree with you, Johnny, and I feel like that's just embodies where we are in the NHL right now. It's like all the guys that I was born in 95, so I feel like, that it's like all the guys that we watched growing up are slowly like the next generation is coming, Shukri, to kick things off though, because they played against your team and they are up 2-0 in their series right now on the road. Do you think this Florida Panther team is for real?
I actually do. And the reason is because I realize this now now that cooler heads have prevailed momentarily, I must add, that this Florida Panther team is the embodiment of death by 1,000 cuts. And I want you guys to really think about that for a moment.
I have no idea what that means, to be honest.
Embodied the statement, death by 1,000 cuts. Okay.
I've never heard that before.
So
that was in a 10th grade.
All right, so English in layman's terms, it's an old not to get graphic, it's an old Chinese torture method, like where like death by 1,000 cuts, where it's like you get cut up by 1,000 different ways to avoid all of the major arteries in your body. So it's like a slow death, so to speak. Meaning that the Florida Panthers, what I realized, especially after last night, they are the type of team where they'll dump the puck in deep and they'll forecheck you to death. And that's exactly what the Panthers are. And I think in all of this, and this rise of the Florida Panthers during this Stanley Cup playoff run so far, which honestly, I'm shocked that they're up 2-0. I thought Toronto last year would actually win game 2, given that they don't want to go down to Florida 2-0. But I keep thinking to myself, guys like Brandon Montour is really making a name for himself. And you know what's interesting? Brandon Montour is not someone that you would normally think as, this is a guy that could that can put the puck in the back of the net. Yes, he's offensively gifted, but he is one of the players on that Panther squad that I look at and I say, this guy will absolutely grind you along the boards and get to those and win those 50-50 puck battles. And I look at some of the other guys like Anthony Duclair, and what else can there be said about Matthew Tkachuk that has been said already? And yes, I am starting to actually think maybe he's the kind of guy that the Bruins need for the playoffs. But no, stupid old me thinks, we don't need him. He's a buffoon. We can do without him. No, he's the kind of guy that we need. So Brandon Montour and as well as Matthew Tkachuk, this Panther team, and it's not just offensively, but the way that they play, they are a grinding out type of team that reminds me of a Western Conference style of play in which that they play heavy, they play physical. A little bit of the Kings team that won a cup in 2012, to be frank. That's what reminds me of this Panther team right now.
Yeah, I've seen people say that or made that comparison to the 2012 Kings. And for me, the Panthers, I think people are forgetting too. Like this team won the President's Trophy last year. Like, yes. I know they traded Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar and whatnot for that Matthew Tkachuk trade. But, this is a team last year, they went to the second round and they got swept by the Tampa Bay Lightning. And now they're back in that same position and they're in the position to sweep the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, what a comeback story that would be. And, we talk about all these teams learning lessons, going through trials and tribulations, like as they go on a quest for the Stanley Cup. Like, Anna talked about the Colorado Avalanche. Look at Nathan McKinnon. It took him 9 years to win a Stanley Cup. I mean, he had 3 straight second round exits. The way you lose sometimes is even more beneficial than winning a, first round, second round series, because you learn how hard it is and what it takes to truly get over that hump. And, I think for me, the Panthers right now, it's Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, listen, that guy is not necessarily a, top 5 goalie in the league right now, but the way he's playing, he lets up 2 early goals last night and then he just, locks it in and somehow something clicks and he just literally looked incredible for the rest of the game. Toronto had a ton of scoring chances. Austin Matthews had, 5 or 6 shots on goal. Mitch Marner had 5 shots on goal. John Tavares, like the big guns for Toronto, had chances, but Bobrovsky was there to shut the door every single time. So Florida right now, for whatever reason, they're, I said it on the NHL show last night that the cats are dogs. They got that hungry dog in them, but this isn't a team that's a fluke. Like, this is a team that was the best team in the NHL last year, and they didn't really lose everything. They lost one key player, but they got a better player in return. And, I think I'm blanking on the other point I wanted to make, which is pissing me off.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah, you might goalie about the blue line.
Huh?
Was it about the goalie, the blue line, the forward group?
Oh no, I got it. So Shukri, it's crazy to think right now that I don't know if you guys remember, the Pittsburgh Penguins lost on home ice to the Chicago Blackhawks, their second to last game of the year. Had Pittsburgh won that game, in which they should have won that game, we would have saw Pittsburgh versus Boston in the first round, and Boston probably would have smoked them, and we wouldn't even be talking about the Florida Panthers right now. So think about that. That's one of the crazier things that we've forgotten about, that crazy Pittsburgh loss on home ice.
But that's just it. You talked about the 2012 Kings. They snuck into the playoffs, and then they just had nothing left they had nothing to lose. They just had fun. They said, fuck it, let's just be gritty, let's just do this. And I think that is the same vibe with the Panthers. Like, when you see them play hockey, you're like, these dudes are just having fun. And both of you guys mentioned Matthew Tkachuk. Now, we're going to talk about this every single show, just because the first show we talked about it was differing opinions, but he is at the top of all the stat boards in all the offensive categories. 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 points. Only guy that has more points in this postseason is Leon Draisaitl, who is really throwing me. We were supposed to talk about what's the most amazing thing we've all seen so far, and I was going to say Leon Draisaitl, but we'll come back to that. Do you guys want Matthew Tkachuk on your team now that you've seen him play a hefty amount of games? What is it, 9 games now in the postseason?
I already said so my mind hasn't changed.
my mind has changed completely. And to be honest with you, yes. And the reason is, it's good to have offensively gifted players, but when you watch Matthew Tkachuk, it's the little things and the intangible that he brings as well in his game. And you talk about his physicality, his willingness to do whatever it takes to win. And I don't know if Matthew Tkachuk directly heard what I said about him during the Bruins demolishing the Panthers in Game 4, where I basically said some unnice things, and it clearly lit a fire under his ass ever since then. So I will give you your flowers, sir. I was wrong. I'm sorry. And Matthew Tkachuk, and all kidding aside, you need that kind of player in which that I think his mentality rubs up on the other guys. And I watch guys like Carter Verhaeghe, so someone who led the Panthers in scoring during the regular season. He's having equal as big of an impact in the playoffs. And I think it comes from the influence of having a guy like Matthew Tkachuk on your team. And I think that cannot be overstated in terms of how important that is, especially when you go through the adversity that the Florida Panthers went through. You're down 3-1 to the best regular season team in the history of the NHL. To be frank with you, I thought the series was over after Game 4. I'm like, all right, they're going to close it out. Game 5, if not Game 6, where they had no problems winning on the road. But there was something interesting about what Matthew Tkachuk said, and I didn't agree with it at first. He said, well, no one thought that we were going to win the series. There were very few people that did, but they were crazy. But they kind of played this, it's us against the world mentality better than anybody that I saw in the first round. So honestly, Matthew Tkachuk, if you ever want to be a future Boston Bruins, come on up to Boston, as long as Don Sweeney doesn't F up the salary cap. But come on up.
Okay. Shifting over to, we could go on and on about Matthew Tkachuk, but shifting over to the Rangers, Johnny, I want to know your recap of the season, and specifically, where do we go with Gerard Gallant? Is he going to continue being the coach of the New York Rangers?
I really thought we were just going to skip over this.
Nope. We're transitioning.
Listen,
it was on my list, and it was starred. I was like, I don't even care if the transition is messy. We got to hit this up.
Parentheses, bold, underline. Listen, I don't want to be one of those people that talks about Gallant's job, because I don't know if you guys saw the breakup day, and he's sitting on the podium talking about how he can't believe that the questions are being asked about him and his job. It's the second year. The team had just gone to back-to-back playoffs. They went to a Game 7 in the first round. They went to the conference finals last year. They were a good team. And was it disappointing? Yes. But does it always fall on the coach? No. And listen, Gallant might not be the best X's and O's coach. He maybe didn't make all the adjustments, but for whatever reason, everywhere this guy's gone, he's only had like 2 or 3 year stints. And, maybe if teams give him more of a leeway, like a 4 or 5 year opportunity, he could get it done. And listen, I'm not saying I want Gallant to be the coach, but I'm also not saying I want him fired. I think sometimes it's hard for coaches to come in and win a Stanley Cup in the first 2-3 years. Like, who does that? I mean, I know we've seen, some AHL coaches and whatnot, like the Pittsburgh Penguins had Dan Bilesma come in and do it. Mike Sullivan came in and did it also. But, I look at coaches like John, and I'm not comparing, but I'm saying like John Cooper coached Tampa Bay Lightning for, I think 7 years before they won their first cup or whatnot. So, sometimes these things take time and the players love playing for him. And I think that's important. Steve Valiquette made a really good point that the Rangers have a trend of going from a coach that likes to let the team figure it out versus a coach that, kind of puts their personality all over the team. Like the Rangers went from Tom Rennie, who, was more of a player's coach, very nice guy, let them do their thing, to then John Tortorella, who was, obviously a very hard-o coach and whatnot. And then after John Tortorella was Alain Vigneault, who was more laid back. And then after Alain Vigneault was David Quinn, who was more, hard-o, that kind of. So it's a back and forth kind of thing with the Rangers right now. And, there are rumors of Joel Quenneville coming back and whatnot, but the NHL obviously has to approve that. And I'm sure that story is going to be told for the next couple of weeks, months even. Peter Laviolette's obviously available. So these are 2 really good coaches that have won Stanley Cups in the past. And I would love to see those guys behind the Rangers bench as well. And sorry if I'm rambling on here, but I'm not the guy who's like, Gallant's got to go. That's not who I am, and that's not what I think. I think obviously you got to see what happens to this roster first before you change the coach, because there's a lot of things to figure out with Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, Keandre Miller, Alexis Lafreniere. A lot of things can shift around. And once that's sorted out, you find the right voice for the group. So I don't think it's coach, then team. I think it's team, then coach, because you got to figure out what you're working with before you even get the voice that's going to lead this group. So that's my thought. I probably bounced around the walls there, but it's a week after the season. The conversation started an hour after the Rangers lost. If Gallant's done, like, it's been 2 years.
Well, that's what. So,
like, I have some.
No, yeah, Shukri, like, go ahead, and if you have thoughts on Rangers, go ahead, because then I have a kind of all-encompassing question for both of you guys.
Yeah, like, I'm not surprised the question is even coming up, because, like, Johnny, you understand this. You work in the New York media. Me being a native New Yorker. And knowing how the sports media landscape is in that city, of course that question is going to be brought up. Unfortunately, that is the exchange for working in the largest market in the NHL, the largest sports media market in the world, in New York. And when you're working for an owner whose temper is more hotter than a bacon, egg, and cheese on a Wednesday morning from a bodega, like, that is the God honest truth. So when you're the owner of the New York Rangers and James Dolan, we all know this as sports fans, but especially Johnny Laz, like, you can understand this even more, especially being an MSG where he oversees the Rangers and the Knicks. Like, when you have the temperament of someone who wants to win, and you come up short 2 straight years, you come up short in the Eastern Conference Finals last year against a Lightning team that was just a miss of their run, and this year you come up short against a New Jersey Devils team that, frankly, I honestly felt that it would be a mistake to overlook them. And I said this in a separate episode, that putting Akira Schmid changed the entire tenor of that series. Like, you can't make knee-jerk reaction. I think it would be a mistake to move on from Gallant now, especially 2 years in. Like, I mean, come on, like, this is a knee-jerk reaction. We gotta make it change because we're trying to win now. The cup window for this team is actually wide open. Hell, I'll say 5 years, as a matter of fact. Look at the young core. Keandre Miller's not going anywhere. Adam Fox is not going anywhere. Igor Shesterkin is not going anywhere. I mean, like, and especially Chris Kreider and obviously Mika Zibanejad, they're not going anywhere. Like, why is there a rush and a need to want to make a coaching change now, especially after a disappointing Game 7 effort against the Devils?
Well, that was what I wanted to ask real quick was, do you feel as a Rangers fan, right? Like, even take the fact that you cover the team, Johnny, like out of it. As a Rangers fan, do you feel like this was it? This was our chance. Now it's over.
I mean, I think this is the best roster. I mean, I know everyone's going to say 94. I wasn't alive. This is the best roster I've seen as far as skill goes on a Rangers team, right? Like, this was the most skilled team on paper I've seen in my lifetime. But I also want to read something too, because I think this is important also, why it always doesn't fall on a coach. But Artemi Panarin kind of came out and talked about his like mental psyche after the playoffs. And I tweeted this quote out that I don't know who wrote the article, because this is just like a picture that was circling around Twitter. But this is what Panarin said. Honestly, last playoff, I turn over like every puck. This year, I don't do that. Not that bad. I don't want to say excuses. Like, it's mental, and I feel terrible in playoffs. Every game I come in excited. I try again and again and again, and it not work. I don't know. So, like when your star player is just going through that sort of mental psyche, like I mentioned before, what coach is really going to come in and help figure that out? Like, that's not an X's and O's thing. That's a human being effect, right? Like, you need a guy who's behind the bench that's going to get your best player feeling as confident as he can be. So, this doesn't all fall on X's and O's, and that's why I'm like, it's not Gerard Gallant. Like, sometimes it really is the players. Like, a lot of it is the personnel. And listen, this is the bottom line. If the Rangers find a way to score in overtime in Game 3, we're not having this fucking conversation right now. The conversation is, oh my God, this Rangers team's for real, and they're playing Carolina. Because let's face it, the Devils are probably not coming back from down 3-0 in that series. Like, I don't think that's happening. So, one little thing like that in a playoff series changes the entire course of an organization. Like, I think it goes beyond just the head coach. And I think this group had a lot of pressure on them, just like the Boston Bruins. And sometimes the pressure just becomes too much. And look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, same thing. It's just the expectation of athletes. And Shukri talked about it. That expectation of playing in New York. Like, what if we hire Joel Quenneville and he doesn't win a cup in 2 years? He's gone too. Like what? Like, you can't just keep recycling coaches if they don't win right away. Like, you got to build, a 5-year, 10-year plan. So that's my little rant. I could talk about this all fucking day. So.
Well, hey, speaking of that, let's do picks for tonight's game. It's just Devils. It's just Carolina. Carolina up 1-0. Who do you guys think wins this series? Do you think Jersey? They looked tired the other night. Do you think they can come back and take it?
I got to recover my voice still, so Shukri, I'll let you do this one.
Do you think the Devils are for real?
I think they can, but I think Carolina delivered a statement in Game 1 that actually caught my attention, in which that, like, listen, the Devils, they were emotionally spent from, winning Game 7 against the Rangers at home. They go on the road to Carolina, and how difficult of a place PNC Arena is down in Raleigh, and Carolina dominates Game 1. Game 2, I think it's going to be fascinating to see, like, how do the forwards like respond to Carolina's relentless forecheck and their physicality along the boards? Because especially at certain points in Game 1, I thought that Carolina really took it to the Devils' speed, which had been a factor at times in round 1 against the Rangers. But in Game 1, it was like, oh, y'all thought your speed was gonna dominate? We're gonna be like thick logs in a swamp of molasses, and let's see how that works. And it slowed on the Devils down on quite a bit, enough where they weren't able to generate the same scoring chances that they were against the Rangers. So I think in Game 2, Lindy Ruff is going to have something up his sleeve. I think he has an opportunity to make some adjustments, but I am wondering about the Devils' ability to adjust against the D-core against the Carolina Hurricanes, because the Hurricanes, the last time I checked in, and correct me if I'm wrong, they were among the NHL leaders in terms of goal score from the D-core group as a whole the entire season. So I wonder if Lindy Ruff is going to have any sort of plan in order to mitigate that, especially going in Game 2.
Yeah, and to Shukri's point, these two teams, when you look at it, 5-on-5, the Devils are the best team off the rush, but the Hurricanes are the best team at defending the rush. So that's kind of like a cancel each other out sort of thing. And both teams in Game 1 failed to score in the power play. I'll pull it up. I think the Devils were 0 for 2 and the Hurricanes were 0 for 3. So special teams to me is going to make all the difference in this series. Had the Devils scored a power play goal, it changes the outcome of the game a little bit. Same thing with the Hurricanes. I know obviously they won 5-1, but I think for the most part, to Shukri's point, the Devils came out first period. You got to weather the storm in game 1, and they weren't able to because, the point of the emotional game 7 win, and Rod Brindamore had like 4 or 5 days to prepare his team, and he's one of the best coaches in the NHL. And also Carolina is one of the best home teams in the NHL. The Devils have only won 1 game in their last 6 trips to Carolina. So the odds are stacked against them on the road, but I do expect a strong bounce back performance from Jersey tonight, but I don't think they'll have what it takes to win in Carolina tonight. We saw it last round. The Devils took a couple games to kind of get their feet under them against the Rangers. And, for whatever reason, they found confidence as the series went on. So I think it's going to be a little similar in this round as well. But Carolina, to me, they're obviously one of the most well-coached teams in the NHL. They don't have the firepower that other teams have in the league, but the way they play as a cohesive team is just bar none. And I think that's the biggest thing. And Freddie Anderson has come in and played well also. And I don't even know who's starting in goal for New Jersey tonight. Lindy Ruff hasn't announced it yet, so that's a question mark as well. But I picked the Devils in 6 originally just because, I thought the Devils had more – I said firepower already, but I'm lacking a better term. So more firepower throughout their lineup than Carolina had. I do think the Devils will find their offense. I could see this series going 7, the home team winning every game. That's just how it seems to be with Carolina a lot of the time. Like that happened with Boston last year. The home team won every single game in that series. But yeah, I'm not counting the Devils out yet, but I do think this Carolina team is super strong, especially defensively. But this series to me is all about special teams because the 5-on-5 are both very strong.
Now, last thing I want to pick your guys' brains on is who is the best American player in the NHL right now? And we have a lot to choose from, you guys, especially guys that are still in the playoffs.
All right, first guy that came to mind, and this might be like a sleeper, even though it shouldn't be a sleeper because, he's a stud, and I actually played against him in college, and I know I'm not correct with this answer because it probably is. What do you say?
Because if you played against him in college, that just like wipes out everything and makes you 10 times more credible just by that statement. So,
well, I think if he was on a better team, we'd be talking about him more. And I know there's a lot of buildup for this answer, but I'm saying Clayton Keller. Clayton Keller is like, a Jack Hughes, up and coming Patrick Kane. He was out in Arizona. Not many people watched that Coyotes team play, but I think post All-Star break, Clayton Keller was right behind McDavid in point production. And for him to do that on a team that was that weak is super impressive. He came back from injury this season as well. He had 86 points in 82 games. He had 37 goals. He basically put that team on his back, a team that was supposed to tank. Clayton Keller to me is going to be one of those guys that is talked about throughout the league if he's in a different market. Like if Keller's, on Florida or on Toronto or on the Devils right now, like he is in that conversation with Matthew Tkachuk, I think. He's a guy that drives play for whatever team he's on. I played against him at BU, and I think I had 2 shifts in the first 5 minutes, and his line scored in both shifts against me. He's that elusive. He's that good of a skater. His vision is incredible. He's got a great shot for a smaller guy. There's obviously a lot of other players that come to mind, like Austin Matthews and whatnot. But to me, Clayton Keller is a guy who's not talked about nearly enough in the NHL simply because of where he's playing.
How about you, Shukri?
I am going to go back just a little bit. I was talking about Matthew Tkachuk earlier, giving him his flowers, like he's the kind of player that I want on the Bruins now, unfortunately. But he's not the best American-born player in the playoffs. I like your take there, Johnny, on Clayton Keller. And it's really a punishment when you play in Arizona that you don't know like the good players that are there. Like, I mean, hell, like how many hockey fans really know about Oliver Ekman-Larsson or even Clayton Keller you were just talking about?
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with Austin Matthews. He's still top dog in terms of like the best American goal scorer in the playoffs still, although you do have Grandpa Joe Pavelski in Dallas, like finally finding a fountain of youth somehow, some way, which I still cannot believe. But it's, to me, it's still Austin Matthews. Like he's the reigning NHL MVP, and like, I mean, he's been productive during these playoffs. But I do want to see more of him in game when the series shifts down to Florida for games 3 and 4, because the Leafs, like, they're in a position where they gotta get more offensively from like their top guns in Marner as well as Matthews and Nylander. And I just think that, like, to stick to my main point, it's definitely Matthews in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I like Austin Matthews from I think I'm gonna say Austin Matthews. I'm gonna piggyback everything that Shukri has said, because also I think it's big being in the playoffs also for the show, so we have something to talk about. I'm also super biased here because it's cool because Austin Matthews was born in Scottsdale. Clayton Keller is a Shattuck St. Mary's guy from Minnesota, so it's like it's a win-win. I'm biased, okay? Like I said this, I'm a Minnesota hockey asshole. So anybody from that state or
everyone in Minnesota is nice,
I'm gonna think better. I'm gonna think that they're like better than everyone. So I'm sorry. I'm just gonna take that approach no matter what. And also, I kind of lived in Arizona growing up, so I'll be biased to that too. Matthew Tkachuk was there for a couple of years. You know, we got a couple Arizona kids.
I want to say one thing about the Arizona thing though, quick.
Yeah,
I think Arda Ocal tweeted it after Matthew Nye scored in game 1. I think it was the first ever Arizona to Arizona like goal assist in like NHL history.
It's cool.
Per Arda.
Yeah.
It's like and it's funny because with these stats, like the California stats and the Arizona stats, it feels like we're reaching, because we're like, oh, like when Trevor Moore scored that overtime goal, the stat that came out I was like, that is the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But also, like, it's kind of cool.
It's great.
And I think also, to your point, like Clayton Keller is in Arizona, so it's not a hockey market. He has less pressure. I mean, like, I grew up there going to games there. I lived in Arizona from 10 to 15 years old. So it was like pretty formative, but for the most part, I lived in Southern California. So I went to a lot of Arizona Coyotes games when they had the little rodent on their jersey. It was horrendous. I like refused to be a fan just because of that. But I mean, there were no butts in seats. So you had like these guys, and they put out some decent talent over the years. You can name it up. Like a lot of big name guys have been through there. And I think as players, they probably like it because they can just chill. Like, it's cool. But then you see like Austin Matthews, who's young, he's American born. He's playing in Canada. He's playing in the biggest team, like the Yankees of hockey, right? Like the Maple Leafs. So then you kind of add that added pressure and then see him perform in on a bigger stage, you know, in the playoffs or something, especially with that added pressure. I think that does kind of go into a decision because it's like, oh, you know, you're here with the big boys. Let's see. We are at 33 minutes. I don't like to listen to podcasts over 33 minutes. So, Johnny, what is your best summer camp hockey moment?
Oh my God.
What hockey camps did you go to in the summer?
No, it's like a sleepaway summer camp. Like I went to like Jewish summer camp.
Did you ever go to hockey camp?
No, not once. I
have been to hockey camp. My dad made me go in northern Minnesota to horse riding / hockey camp.
Wow.
You cannot make it up.
I never did that. My dad went to summer camp, so I went to the same summer camp that he went to. I went for 11 years. I went from 2003 to 2012. So my funny camp story, like Adam Fox went to camp with me. That's how I know Adam pretty well. He went for 3 summers, and then he got just too good at hockey to keep coming back. You know, I got good at hockey later in life, but I guess like what's a good story? Man, this is like putting me on the spot. I mean, this is 11 years of camp.
Come on.
I guess I can tell an I'll tell an Adam Fox story if that's cool. If people want to hear that, they probably don't want to. They don't give a shit about my stories. So we like there was like always like an Olympics kind of thing, like red versus gray, like 3 days of like playing every sport. Yeah. And because Adam was like so good at hockey, like no one else in his age group was like remotely able to skate. They made him play lefty, and I think he still scored like 6 goals against the other team playing wrong-handed. That's how good Adam was at hockey. Like it's like since we were 10 years old. But yeah, a lot of summer camp stories. I'll stick with that one for now. And if we do this again, I'll try to think of more. But yeah, love camp. It's the best.
Love camp.
That's my story.
Hey, final thoughts, you guys. Going into the weekend. First weekend where you don't have to be stressed out.
I'm getting drunk. But no,
I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. That does sound phenomenal. Honestly,
getting drunk,
like either that or enjoying some good old cannabis, and like seriously, like I need to drown out my sorrows. I need to drown out my sadness. I need to get rid of my anger. Like one way or the other. Like
take a bubble bath, man.
It's gotta. You understand, Johnny? And
I'll
like
have an edible and a bubble bath any day.
Bubble bath with John Mayer.
It's not a horrible idea, actually. Like, you're giving me ideas now. That may be my Saturday night plans for all I care.
Hey, man, just ask the California girl. I got you.
Listen, that's why maybe I need to go out to California and find me my future lady. But what do I know? but so I will say that weekend thoughts. I am really curious to see how this Seattle-Dallas series is going to shape now that it's moving over to Seattle. The series is tied 1-1. A bounce back win for the Stars last night in Game 2, winning 4-2. But man, I can't stop thinking about Joe Pavelski and like that 4-goal performance he had in Game 1, the oldest player in NHL history to have 4 goals in a Stanley Cup playoff game ever, which is wild, considering that he was his first game back from injury. And it's like, what the hell? So Joe Pavelski, I don't know what water you've been drinking, but keep drinking it, bud. Like, I want to see you score more of those in Seattle.
I don't know if you guys hear there's a loud horn outside my apartment, so I apologize for that.
I don't hear anything, to be honest with you.
You got the right mic, man. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bravo to your mic. Go on those Amazon reviews and say, hey, I was doing a podcast and there was a horn outside my apartment and nobody could hear me. And yeah,
this is where this beautiful electro voice radio mic windbreaker comes into play. Like, it takes away all other.
It's way cooler than mine. I stole my mic from my